Rejoice in the Lord always is our message today on this Gaudete Sunday. Once again, that word means to rejoice. And I guess the noun of joy is the spirit which we're trying to receive today. And that's why we wear the rose vestments. I guess it's somewhere between white and violet. Besides, it complements my complexion pretty good. So, in other words, we're getting much closer to celebrating Christmas. We are getting nearer to the commemoration of the dawning of our salvation. And that, friends, should be enough to keep us in joy. There's a lot of celebration. This past week has been pretty frantic, right? Immaculate Conception. We had Our Lady of Guadalupe. On New Year's Day, we'll have the Mother of God. So you know you're getting close to the Christmas season when your mother drags you to church multiple times a week, okay? Mother Mary is drawing us closer to church. Why? Because she is drawing us closer to her Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. That's the joy that we carry with us. But we also heard in our second reading today from the letter of James, of all letters, of perhaps a pitfall or something that works against that joy. I don't know if you caught it. What works against this joy, this rejoicing in the nearness of the Lord, not only in commemoration, but really because he's already in our hearts? James says, do not complain, brothers and sisters, about one another. No one here complains, right? You know that person that's always complaining? They just draw the life out of the day, right? They're always complaining. Do you know that person? If you don't, it's probably you. If you have Christ in your heart, I think what James is saying, there's no room for complaining about others. We got enough of our own things to complain about. But even that, we don't share with others. We bear it patiently. Bear it patiently, much like our Lord bore those hurts, those places of brokenness, those places of darkness and sinfulness in our own lives. Right? I think that's what leads us to complaining. We are weighed down by the burdens of this life. The opposite, though, is to rejoice because the Lord wants to take those burdens from us. And just as he takes those from us, whether it's in the sacrament of reconciliation or just carrying those, being with us and knowing our desires and our needs and our wants, his presence with us is what we rejoice in. And that, friends, of course, is probably no better celebrated than here at the Eucharist, when the Lord takes on our very flesh so that he can tell us and remind us, I am with you always until the end of the age. And yes, that is something greatly to rejoice in. So this third Sunday of Advent, actually like many Sundays, we have an example of someone who lived this well, and that's the prophet John the Baptist. And John the Baptist, we find, actually in this case, he was already in prison. So what are those characteristics of John that make him, as Jesus described, one of the greatest born among women? First of all, he was out in the desert. He was wearing camel's hair. He was living off locusts and honey. He was a simple man. Probably, again, kind of one of those castaways, someone you would never think could even give us anything of value, right? So he lived in the margins. In some ways, he was so unattached to this world that he could preach the truth. Is that what a prophet is, right? To preach the truth, to live the truth in your life. Now, most of us, I'm included in this, are too attached to to what we look like, to how we're going to be perceived, that we're afraid to speak the truth because, here I am, the pastor. If I say something, I have to live with you all, right? John the Baptist was living out in the desert, so he could say what he wants to. But one of the things that made John great is that he was so unattached to this world because he was already living really in the world that is to come. He knew that there was something greater waiting, and that something greater was also a person in Jesus Christ. So the second thing that made John the Baptist such a great preacher, not that he had to be the Messiah. Have you ever had that? They say that about newly ordained priests. Don't tell Father Peter. We have this Messiah complex. We want to fix everything. But truthfully, we don't have to be the Christ. We, like John the Baptist, have to point to the Christ. That's a relief to me. We don't have to be Jesus. We just have to point to Jesus to others by our manner of living, by the way we treat one another, the way that we care for one another, the way that we love for one another, the way we forgive one another. We point to Jesus. And of course, yes, we try to live as much as we can like Jesus, again, who gives himself to us in the Eucharist. But John the Baptist pointed to Jesus. And he did this while he was in prison, in this case, right? Again, so he was somehow detained, somehow held back, even though he was unattached to this world. And I think that's something that maybe we can draw upon. And you might say, how? Okay, so let's turn to then one of the prophecies, not just of John the Baptist, but of the coming of the Lord. And so we find that in the first reading here, okay? Isaiah is proclaiming the time of the coming of the Lord, the Messiah for the Old Testament. For us, we understand that's Jesus. And here's the things that will precede the coming of the Lord. The eyes of the blind to be opened, the ears of the deaf be cleared, the lame leap like a stag, the tongue of the mute will sing. That's the prophecy of Isaiah. That was 500 years before John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. And so we come to the story of John in the prison, and he was asking Jesus through his messengers, is he the one? Is he the one that all these prophecies have been talking about? Rejoice. John the Baptist was in prison rejoicing. And so what was the message? I don't know how long that took, back and forth. What was the message? And Jesus says, tell John what you see. And what is it they witnessed? The blind regain their sight, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have the good news proclaimed to them. Precisely those marks that we saw in Isaiah are now here present in the time of Jesus, and those then would have been signs that this is the Messiah. Who are the blind? Who are the lame? Who are the deaf? Who are the lepers? Who are the dead? Who are the poor? Speaking of itinerant preachers, we just had a wonderful visit from Father Geronimo Espinoza, and he even said, I'm from Colombia, I don't have political correctness, so I could say whatever I want, right? And so those of us who joined him on Thursday had a great message, and one of those things that he shared and really kind of touched my heart is that we all feel at some time in our lives marginalized. We all feel at some point in our lives that we don't belong. We all feel at some times in our lives, sometimes the whole of our lives, that we have no one to go to. Let me paint a picture, and this is again from Father Geronimo. He spoke of a lunch line, and I remember this. So you pick up that plastic tray, whether this is elementary school or college, right? You pick up that tray, and then you got that perfect square, that a flat piece of bread with some cheese and a little bit of pepperoni on it. They call it pizza, is on your plate. And then there's like these canned green beans, maybe an orange wedge, your milk carton, right? And so you get this lunch tray and you kind of go through the line and you step out into the cafeteria. And what's the thing that the thing that you dread or the thing that you're trying to remember? Where am I going to sit? Who are my friends? Am I going to eat alone? This touched my heart. I don't know. You guys are silent right now. Have you experienced this before? Maybe it's not the lunch line. Some of you are homeschooled. But it's somewhere else in your life. I don't know. I arrived here 6 months ago. I had my lunch tray. I don't know anybody here. A scary feeling. Not only that, when you're in charge, oh my goodness, you're really alone. You eat at the lunch table alone. So we've all felt that, right? That we don't belong. I mean, I think that's built into the human experience. Why? Because we belong somewhere else. Any rate, so we all experience that, and the way maybe that is experienced is through the blind. We're blind sometimes to our bad habits. We're deaf to hearing the voice of the needy. We're lame when it comes time to help somebody. It's like, I just want to sit back and relax. We are dead when it comes to the life of faith sometimes. For you young people, have you ever seen those reels or threads where the videos of these people, sometimes they're infants who hear for the first time, or even adults who see color for the first time? Have y'all seen that? I don't know why they just come up on my feed. What happens when they first hear, when they first see, when they see color, when they hear music? They rejoice. They rejoice. First of all, because someone knows that they have been hurting. And then second of all, someone did something about it. Jesus knows that we are hurting. Secondly, he did something about it. And that, friends, is what is cause for rejoicing. And so when we see these things happening in our lives and in the lives of others, we know the Lord is near, not just at Christmas, but he is always present in our lives. And to that we say, rejoice always, for the Lord is near.